So while she's doing that, we're very excited to welcome Darcy Shapiro. Darcy is a Rutgers alumni. That's actually how we know her. I don't even remember what year it was you did an internship with us at the museum, but she left and went on to bigger and better things. And on Twitter, I found that she was working for this really cool job as like what is it, science content editor? Is that kind of what your job is?
A science communicator is like the
Okay.
the broadest way to put it.
Yeah. And so when she announced that she's working on this new show, Bizarre Beast, I thought it was so cool. And I'm so thrilled she said yes, that she would give a presentation for us about this really cool project that she's part of. So take it away, Darcy. Tell us about what makes animals weird.
Will do. Okay. Hey, everyone. Um, Thanks for that introduction, Lauren. And I wanted to start off by thanking you and Patty and all the folks at the Rutgers Geology Museum for asking me to give this talk. So, as you said, I'm Darcy Shapiro. I'm an anthropologist and a science communicator. And after I got my PhD in anthropology at Rutgers, I started working for a company called Complexly that makes educational YouTube videos. Maybe you guys have seen Crash Course or SciShow. That's the company that I work for. And today I'm going to be talking to you about Bizarre Beasts, one of the two channels I work on, which is all about weird animals. So, what makes an animal weird? This is like the first question that I start off with when I'm working on a new episode. And when I tell people I work on a show about weird animals, they usually want to suggest some for us to do episodes on. And they give a lot of different reasons why this animal is weird and deserving of an episode. Maybe it looks really funny, or maybe it does something unexpected, or maybe it's just their favorite animal and they want to learn more about it and share it with everybody on the internet. So from here, I'm going to introduce you to some weird animals that fit each of these possible answers. So some things that make animals weird might be it looks weird, maybe it's the only one of its kind in some way, maybe it does something that we as humans just can't do, or maybe it's counterintuitive, maybe it goes against expectations in some way. So I'm going to start with some honorable mentions for each of these different categories, because I couldn't possibly pick just one weird animal for each of them to talk about. And then I'm going to tell you my personal pick for which is like the featured weirdo in this category. And to warn you, I'm definitely biased towards mammals, because they're the group that I know best and they're the group that we belong to. You know, they've got fur, they nurse their young. Most animals you know are probably mammals. And they're cute, which is a pro. My unbiased opinion, though, is that anything that lives in the deep ocean is the weirdest animal, just like every single one of them. And I'll talk about some of them too, because they're pretty incredible. Okay, so a first category for maybe what makes an animal weird is that it looks weird. And I've got a lot of animals on screen here, and I'm just gonna like touch on each of them, because they're all weird looking, but like in kind of different ways. So things that look weird to us are weird because they're not the normal animals that we encounter in our lives. Like normal animals are ones we see every day or we have some kind of relationship with. And what's like a normal animal depends on you, like who's looking at it. It's based on what you expect about the animals in your location or in the environment you're in. Like when I lived in New Brunswick, I expected to see squirrels in the trees, but not monkeys, right? So a monkey in New Brunswick would be like a weird animal, but a squirrel would not be. So what animals are weird, or what we think of as being weird, varies from person to person. And they kind of range from stuff that looks like almost right. So these are like animals 1 through 4 that I have labeled here, and 7, that black bird. And then there are animals that look weird because they're just totally alien, right? And that's like 5, 6, and maybe 8. So I guess 1 is a platypus, right? This is like a classic weird animal. You guys have probably seen it before. But it's weird because it looks like you smushed a duck and a beaver together, right? It's got elements of animals that are familiar, maybe, but together they form something weirder than the sum of their parts. Two is a pink fairy armadillo. Maybe you've seen an armadillo before. They're gray, kind of scaly looking. The pink fairy is it's just a fancy little armadillo, you know? So it's like another little, it's a little weird. Three, the saiga. It's an antelope, lives in Central Asia. That could be a deer, right? Just with like a Star Wars face piece happening, right? They're very cool. And then four is the maned wolf. It just looks like a fox on stilts, right? These are like, we took a normal animal and we just made it like a little weird. Seven is the long wattled umbrella bird, which it could be a crow, just like feeling really fancy that day. But then five, six, and eight, these guys are like, whoa, those are weird because like they don't really look like other stuff. They don't look like our normal stuff. So we got the vampire squid at number five. Remember I said I'd say something about deep sea animals. There's one. Like, what is that? It's basically an alien, right? Six is the red-lipped batfish, sometimes with internet fame, but it's does that look like a fish? I don't think it looks like a fish, right? It's a weird-looking fish. And then eight is the Indian purple frog. And like, who made a frog purple? Why? Okay, so these were the honorable mentions for the it looks weird category. But my pick for this is the Colugo. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. They're like pretty obscure. They're also known as flying lemurs, even though they're not lemurs and they don't fly, which is maybe another reason that they're weird, right? We tried to put a name on them that's something familiar to us, even though it doesn't actually describe what these animals really are. It looks kind of like a camo-colored squirrel bat mashup, but cute. There's two species of them. They live in Southeast Asia. They're mammals, like us, and they're gliders, right? So we got one with its little skin membranes stretched out there, soaring through the air. But they don't fly like bats do, right? It kind of looks like a bat, but the wing membrane, it's between all four of its limbs and its tail. And in bats, they have really, really elongated finger bones, and then the membrane is between those. And they fly kind of like birds by flapping their wings. But Colugos, they just jump out of a tree and glide, kind of like flying squirrels. They've also got very weird teeth, which is the other picture on this slide. Those are their front teeth, they're incisors, and they look like combs. Like no other mammal has teeth that look like combs like this, which I think is very weird. I look in the mirror, I think teeth are weird kind of anyway. These are extra weird teeth. And in terms of what they're related to, it's not bats, it's us. It's primates and tree shrews are their closest living relatives, even though they don't really look like us. Okay. So for our second category of possible weirdness, I was going with it's the only one. Like it's unique. This is the second category. And these are our honorable mentions for that. These animals do something very different from other animals, or they don't have any close living relatives. So here I'm measuring weirdness compared to other animals, not compared to what we think of as normal. So on top, that fish is a member of the family of ice fish. They're the only vertebrate, the only animal with a backbone that doesn't have hemoglobin in their blood. Now, hemoglobin is what makes blood red, and theirs is clear. So that's what you can see in those two test tubes. They have actually clear blood. And we talked about them on Bizarre Beasts before, if you want to go back and check out the video. There's a lot more weird stuff about the ice fish to share. On the bottom, that bird is the Watson. And then we've got the Colugo again, because really, this whole presentation is just me trying to convince you that Colugos are really, really great. And the Watson and the Colugo are the only animals that are in their order. They're just alone there. They're like lonely little twigs on the branches of their family tree. And we'd have to go back millions of years to find the point that they split off from their closest living relatives. So they're evolutionarily pretty unique. We've also talked about the Watson on Bizarre Beasts, the bird that smells like cow poop because it eats leaves and then ferments them. So it's a pretty weird bird. Okay, but my pick for the unique category is this guy called the tuatara. It's not a lizard. You think it looks like a lizard. It's not a lizard. They're actually also the only surviving member in their taxonomic order. They shared a common ancestor with lizards about 259 million years ago. So they are older than the dinosaurs. And they've pretty much looked like lizard wannabes ever since then. They used to actually be more widespread and diverse than lizards are until sometime in the Cretaceous period. And you can tell them apart from lizards by their teeth, which I'm highlighting in that other picture. They have two parallel rows of teeth in their upper jaws, which is weird, right? Most things just have the one row of teeth, unless you're talking about things like sharks. They've also got a little beak-like structure formed by their front teeth that lizards don't have. So if you ever needed to ID a lizard and a tuatara, this is how you do it. You probably wouldn't be doing this, though, unless you lived maybe in New Zealand, because that's the only place that they live today. The name tuatara is actually Maori for peaks on their back, for their little spiny bits. And they actually live for up to 77 years in captivity. They're long-lived, which is cool. And there's just the one species of them. So they're very, very unique, long-lasting survivors, solo species. Okay. The third category of weirdness is about things that we as humans can't do. So we're defining weirdness in relation to us again, but instead of it being about expectations about the animal, it's kind of about our own limitations. So the honorable mentions that I'm showing you here are the colugo. Surprise, there it is again. They glide. We can't do that. Then we've got the Greenland shark, because I promised you some ocean animals. They live in freezing cold waters in the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans, which we can't do. And they may live to be like 400 years old, which we also can't do. They don't even start reproducing until they're 150. So it takes them a long time to, get started. And it's probably related to them living in this very, very cold environment. So next to the Greenland shark, we've got Cuvier's beaked whale, which when I was putting this presentation together, I was like, oh, the deepest diving, longest diving whale is the sperm whale, right? It's not. It's Cuvier's beaked whale. They've been measured at dives lasting up to 222 minutes. And they can go almost 2 miles down. Just that little porpoise guy just swimming on down there, which, needless to say, we cannot do, right? Then the other side of the slide, I'm putting manatees and sloths together because they do the same weird thing that we and all other mammals can't do. Okay? They are just these three, solo, alone with this. Over time, they've changed the number of bones in their necks. So most mammals, from us to giraffes, and we've got quite a range of neck lengths going on there. We have 7 bones in our neck, 7 cervical vertebrae. Manatees have 6. Two-toed sloths have between 5 and 7. And 3-toed sloths have 8 or 9. And mammals in general, this is like part of their developmental biology. If the number of neck vertebrae change while they're developing, it usually goes along with other like bad changes, like defects and cancers and things like that. So manatees and sloths have beaten the 7 neck bone game for mammals, which I think is really cool. Also, like sloths. Of course I'm going to show you sloths. It's a weird animal presentation. My pick, though, is a tie. I don't know if you've noticed, I just want to tell you about every weird animal. And these two are exceptionally weird. So we have the sea slug, Elysia timida. Uh, they live in the shallow waters in the Mediterranean Sea. And the shallow waters are key because they need sunlight to live. Because they snack on algae and then they steal the chloroplasts from the algae they're eating and keep them in their digestive tract. And the chloroplasts just keep photosynthesizing. So the sea slug eats the algae, takes the chloroplasts, and then uses them to make energy for it. So like it's a living animal that's photosynthesizing, which no matter how many green veggies you and I eat, you can't do it. So that's awesome. It's also got like a really good mint green and polka dot aesthetic, which I appreciate in a weird animal. And then the other side of the slide, we have the sea pangolin. Remember what I said about us naming things after other things? The pangolin, also a very good weird animal. This is not that animal. This is a scaly foot snail. They live on 4 hydrothermal vents in the Indian Ocean, like 1.5 miles underwater. So they have to deal with crushing water pressure. And because they live on hydrothermal vents, water temperatures get up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. And these little snails survive by building their own suit of armor out of iron sulfide. So that's why they've got that dark outer shell. And researchers also think it doesn't eat anything. It has bacteria that live in a gland that produce energy for it. So like it builds its own armor and it doesn't eat anything. And like we have to eat. We cannot do this. Yeah, so I think both, remember when I said deep sea animals? I think these both are just absolutely incredible. Okay, the final category of weirdness is that a thing goes against expectations. I have a bunch of honorable mentions here. I'm gonna make it through all of them. Okay, so here I'm saying a thing is not closely related to the things it looks the most like. So this weirdness is about our expectations about relationships between animals based on what they look like. So the first one was like, it looks weird compared to all other animals. This one is like, it looks weird compared to its closest relative. So on the blue side of the slide, we have the binturong questioning everything. Who am I? It's also called a bear cat. That kind of looks like a weasel. It's not a bear. It's not a cat. It's not a weasel. It is a member of a family called Viverridae. It also lives in Southeast Asia. And its pee smells like buttered popcorn or corn chips for some cool biochemical reasons that we talk about in the Bizarre Beasts video on the binturong. You want to check that out for more. On the white part of the slide, at the top, we've got a bat and the colugo again, because this is a colugo appreciation presentation. And I already told you, they're not that closely related. Bats, it turns out, are more closely related to carnivores, horses, antelope, and whales than they are to the colugo, in spite of both of these guys coming up with this whole skin membrane flying system thing. And speaking of whales, we've got a humpback whale there in the middle, next to their closest living relative, the hippo. And this was kind of like a paleontological mystery for a long time, like where do whales come from? What are they related to? And we figured out that they're related to hippos based on some ankle bones from some very old fossil whales that still had ankles, which you may notice, they no longer have ankles. Okay. And then down at the bottom, we've got our very last honorable mentions, which are hyenas. And I love hyenas. They were my favorite animal as a child, so I had to find a way to get them in here somewhere. They look kind of like dogs, but they're actually more closely related to cats. And the striped one is called an aardwolf. And even though it's got wolf in the name, it's still a hyena, more closely related to cats. But it actually just eats insects, kind of like an anteater. So it itself is like a weird, especially weird hyena. even among all hyenas, which are weird. Okay, so my featured pick for this strange evolutionary relationships category are these little guys called hyraxes. They look kind of like rodents, but they're not. They're found in the Middle East and sub-Saharan Africa. They're active in the daytime. Some of them live in trees and are more kind of solitary. They live on their own. And some live in rock outcrops and they live in groups. They have suction cup feet. So they can like tense the muscles in their hands and feet to like better suction cup onto rocks so they can climb better, which as a rock climber myself, I would like to have that special power. They also make a really, really terrible high-pitched screaming noise that I couldn't figure out how to embed here, so you're welcome. But you can find it on YouTube if you want to check it out. And they split from the group that includes elephants and manatees around 65 million years ago. And okay, manatees and elephants, they're both big, they're both gray, but they've also changed a lot in that time too. Like we've got legs versus no legs, so that's a big change. And all of these guys are related to each other more closely than to anything else, which is wild, and I love it. Okay, so is the colugo the weirdest animal? It showed up in every category of weirdness, and you might expect that I'm going to tell you it is, but it's not. I think the weirdest animal is us. As an anthropologist, I study what makes us human, from our early ancestors to how we got to be what we are today. So while there's no doubt that we're mammals and primates and great apes, and we have a lot of things in common with all of those groups, we've also got some pretty weird quirks of our own. And I want to turn this like figuring out what's weird lens on us now. Okay, so we look weird. We do check that first box, right? Compared to other primates, we're pretty hairless and unusually sweaty. And this probably has to do with another one of our weird traits, which I'll talk about on the next slide. So while we are still covered in hair, it's very thin and fine. And we have between 2 and 5 million watery sweat glands, which is like 10 times more than chimpanzees have. And they're our closest living relatives. Yeah, so if you check out the primates that I've got on this slide, all of them have, exceptionally luxurious coats, and we just do not. Yeah, so I think we look weird compared to other primates. Okay, in terms of what's really unique about us, we're the only animal that does this walking and running upright thing as our primary way we get around. Two-legged birds and kangaroos and their relatives don't move the way we do, even though they also get around on 2 feet. We're what are called obligate bipeds. We evolved to run and walk, and we can't really do anything else. And this means we have very unique-looking hip bones compared to other primates, and it means we have worse knee and back problems, unfortunately. It might also be the reason that we're mostly hairless and pretty sweaty. Some researchers think being able to better cool our bodies through sweating helped our ancestors be better at chasing down prey. And the other YouTube channel that I work on, PBS Eons, just released an episode on this today, if you're curious about our unusual sweatiness. Okay, so that's checkbox number 2. Category number 3, do we do something that other animals can't do? And can we flip it around and say, is there something we don't do that a lot of other animals do? The thing that we do that other animals can't do is we drink their milk. We drink the milk of other animals. Some of us. And this, as far as I know, is something no other animal does unless we're the ones giving it to them. As kids, most of us could drink milk, no problem. We're able to break down the lactose, which is the particular kind of sugar in it. And some of us hang on to this ability as adults, which is also something that no other mammals do, though a lot of people also don't. And the thing that we don't do that most other mammals can do is that our bodies can't make their own vitamin C. We have to get it from our food. And we lost the ability to make our own vitamin C along with all of our other monkey and ape relatives sometime around 60 million years ago because of like a tiny change in one of our genes. So drink your milk if you can. Eat your oranges. Okay, so I say check. We do weird stuff. And I think we maybe go a little bit against expectations in terms of what we're most closely related to. So I'm stretching a little bit here. We're definitely not as different looking from chimpanzees as a hyrax is from an elephant. But early anthropologists, they looked at chimps and gorillas and then in the mirror, and they figured that chimps and gorillas were probably each other's closest relatives, which, okay, fair. They've both got dark fur, similar noses, they both walk on their knuckles. We don't do these things. But we know now from genetics that that isn't true. Chimps are our closest relatives, and the gorilla is a cousin of both. So I'm giving us a checkbox on this one because I'm the one who made the presentation. So really what I'm trying to say with all of this is that what's weird depends on who's doing the deciding. It's about what's weird to us. And we can look at ourselves in the same way. We're strange and unique, and so are most other animals out there if you look hard enough. So thanks. That's my wrap up on this. We're weird animals, but there's a lot of other weird animals out there too. And I'd love to tell you guys more about them on Bizarre Beasts, youtube.com/bizarrebeasts. New episodes come out the first Friday of every month, including this Friday. We've got a great one for December, and I'm very excited about it. But if extinct animals and fossils are more your style, you can check out the other channel I work on, which is youtube.com/eons. So thanks for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions about weird animals that I can.
That was, sorry, I have my weird animals barking and climbing on me at my house. But that was great. That was so interesting. Thank you. You can stop sharing if you want to go to the Google Doc. We've been compiling questions for you there.
Sure. I had it open in another one of my tabs. Oh no. Let's see if I can find it.
Julie, can you send it to her in the chat?
Just I got it. We're good.
Okay, good.
Okay. Okay. I'm starting from the top. What is the most unusual snake that I know of? I mean, I don't know very many snakes personally, but sea snakes, I think that's a pretty unusual snake, right? Because they've managed to live in the water. And once you have evolved to live on land and then you go back into the water, that's pretty weird. Yeah, so sea snakes. My most unusual snakes answer is sea snakes. I've been looking for a good snake to do a Bizarre Beasts episode about. Haven't found one yet that I want to talk about, but I will eventually, I'm sure. The second question, if the tuatara is not a lizard, then what is it? How big can they get? So they're reptiles, like lizards are. They're just in their own order called Rhynchocephalia. They're just other reptiles that happen to look like lizards, but they aren't actually lizards. And as far as how big they can get, I don't know off the top of my head. I would imagine fairly large. I saw some Google images of people holding them kind of like iguana style, and they looked maybe about this big, but I don't know how big they max out. So maybe the Google elves behind the scenes can check that one for me. What's the weirdest animal I've personally encountered? Huh. I have to think about this for a second. I mean, this one, is this the hardest question that I'm gonna get? Maybe. I mean, you just saw me give a presentation on 27 weird animals. I don't know if I can pick just one for me. I'll give this a thought and come back to it maybe. Let's Can I put praying mantis here as like this is a possible answer? Praying mantises. I now live in California, and prior to living in California, I had seen maybe two in my entire life, and they're just like everywhere here. They're pretty weird. Oh, we got an answer on the tuatara. They can get 1/2 meter in length. So it's a pretty good sized reptile, you know. What do colugos eat? Fruit, leaves, maybe some bugs. Herbivorous. Are colugos related to flying squirrels, or do they have a similar build? They have a similar build. It's convergent evolution, where two unrelated animals end up with the same adaptations because they have a similar lifestyle and they live in similar environments. Okay. Is there a reason tuataras haven't migrated away from New Zealand, from Astree? It's an island. They just can't make it off. That's pretty much the answer. A follow-up from Astree. Do we know why ice fish have clear blood? Yeah, because they don't have any hemoglobin in their blood. And hemoglobin is the thing that hooks onto iron. And you know, when iron rusts, it turns red. So hemoglobin carries iron in blood, and that's why it's red. And since ice fish don't have any hemoglobin, no red blood. They have clear blood instead. They're actually a lot less efficient than we are at carrying oxygen in our blood because of this. Philip says, ice fish have clear blood. Why is it clear? Does it have the same properties as regular blood? Well, I answered part of that. As far as the properties of their blood, it's not as thick as red blood. That's pretty much it. And like I said, it just doesn't carry oxygen as well, because the oxygen just has to like diffuse into the clear blood instead of being able to like hang on to these little red blood cells and get carried along. Are there other animals that make their shells out of iron sulfide? Not that I'm aware of. I think the scaly-foot snail might be unique in that regard, which is pretty incredible. What's my favorite bizarre animal? I mean, this is like, what's the weirdest animal I've ever personally encountered? Is it possible to have a favorite? Let's just say the colugo. I mean, I have to, right? If we bring a sea pangolin to the surface, would it survive since it's used to crushing water pressures? I don't know how this works for deep sea snails. I know when they bring up like deep sea fish to the surface to study, they have to do it in a special way so those fish don't like pop. But I'm not sure about the sea pangolin. Okay. How did I get involved with the Bizarre Beasts channel? So, like I said, I work for a company called Complexly, and I originally started working for them as a freelance writer for PBS Eons. And when I ended up transitioning to full-time working there, my boss, Hank Green, wanted to make Bizarre Beasts its own channel because he'd originally started doing this on his Vlogbrothers channel. And I happen to be a person on staff who really likes weird animals, so that's how I ended up writing for Bizarre Beasts. Do I know of any animals that also get knee and back pain like people do? Any vertebrate can have back pain. It's been documented in horses and dogs. Our particular back and knee pain is because our ancestors got around on four limbs, you know, like the way that other primates do. And for us, the changes to our skeletons that had to happen to let us be upright walkers and runners just puts a lot of pressure on our back and our knees. So blame evolution for that one. Do all animals make their own vitamin C? Most other mammals do. Guinea pigs also don't. Um, there are some fruit bats that also don't make their own vitamin C. They eat fruit, like much like we did back in the day, so it's not really a problem. And there are a number of birds that are also fruit eaters that have lost the ability to make their own vitamin C. So it seems to be like a pretty common gene mutation across mammals and birds for the most part, which doesn't make it any less weird. Guys, I see you there trying to trip me up. Um, what is a really bizarre extinct animal? There are so many. There are so many. I guess I've been thinking a lot about these long-necked marine reptiles called tanystrophiids lately. They kind of look like a plesiosaur or like Loch Ness Monster, if you know what those are supposed to look like. Um, yeah, they have just incredibly long necks and like little tiny heads. So they're a weird one. The Triassic period was just absolutely full of wild, bizarre, extinct animals. Um, there's another one called a topodentatus that had like a flat hammerhead mouth that it like clipped plants, sea plants with. Weird. It's just a weird looking animal. Next up, do I have a favorite dinosaur? Yes, I do have a favorite dinosaur. I have an answer to this question. It's Parasaurolophus. That's my favorite dinosaur. Um, I have one that lives on my desk. That's this guy. They're kind of a classic duck-billed dinosaur. Um, there have been studies about whether they could make like honking noises with the crests on their heads. I don't know. I've always liked them since I was a child. They're my favorite dinosaur. They just seem like they'd be nice, you know. Christina wants to know what is the biggest weird animal? The blue whale. I mean, objectively, it's the biggest animal I think that has ever existed, like in the history of animals, and it's alive today. Like we share our planet with the biggest thing ever, which is like pretty incredible. Um, Carl says, I have recently read that platypus fluoresce under black light. Do I have a guess as to why that happens? Honestly, I saw this article also, but I read the headline and then I didn't read the full article. I know that there are flying squirrels that also fluoresce bubblegum pink under black light, and it might be that they can see this fluorescence happening more than we can in other kinds of light. So it might be some kind of signal just between platypuses saying like, hey, I'm here. That's my best guess off the top of my head. Oh, that's the end of it. Okay, well, thanks for all your questions, guys. I absolutely loved talking about weird animals. And yeah, thanks for all the questions. Really excited.
Hey, thank you so much, Darcy. That was really awesome. I learned so much. I didn't even see a lot of these animals before, so that was really cool. So thank you again for giving that talk for us and telling us all about these bizarre animals. And
No
thank you to our
problem.
audience. Oh, and thank you to our audience for everyone for joining tonight. And so just want to make a little announcement that on Friday, we do have our Ask a Geologist web series continuing at 1 p.m. And we will have Sophia Podzik from, she's going to be talking about anthropology, archaeology, and that's going to be on Friday at 1 p.m. So please tune into that, and thank you once again, Darcy. And I think you have something to say.
And I wanted to also remind you guys that this is the last late night of this year. So we will also regroup in the spring semester. We're already working on that. And we are preparing for our virtual open house, and that will happen on January 30th, 2021. So please mark your calendars. We will provide you with more information shortly.
Yes, and be sure you all subscribe to Bizarre Beasts
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that you can hear more of what Darcy does. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your night or afternoon for those who are on the West Coast. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.